It's draft week, baby, and ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter emptied out his notebook, and it had some interesting things to say about the New York Jets. We react to it. Boy Green Daily starts now.
I'm going to lose my gosh darn bananas. Boy Green Daily starts now. Zoinks!
Boy Green Daily, Boy Green Daily, Boy Green Daily. Let's go!
Put your seatbelts on. Get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, and we're built for this shit.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Paul Esden Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. Welcome to Boy Green Daily, a daily New York Jets video show, also available wherever you get your podcast. Again, breaking this morning was Adam Schefter's notebook being dumped, and he does this every Monday of draft week. And boy, was there some interesting intel, not only on the New York Jets, but the rest of the NFL. But specifically, we'll talk about a lot of the Jets factors and then get into other nuggets of interest. And every Monday on the show, we're joined by none other than Drew Beatty at Iron City Film, one of the many draft professors at draftprofessor.com. He graces us with his presence on draft week, the best time of the year. Good morning, Drew.
Morning, Paul. How we doing?
Hey, draft week. Yeah, I got to imagine that, your engine is revving.
We're finally here. It's always a weird lull when you finally get to this last, 3 or 4 days before the draft. Because, I put out my finalized top 100, yesterday. My 2025 work is done, really. I'm just waiting for the draft. I've started my 2026 work yesterday. I've already started watching my first player for next year. But, we're in this just weird spot where you kind of get, 3 days to kind of relax before the draft stuff hits. And you just kind of get to enjoy the fruits of our labor in this draft season, just sit back and enjoy it.
All right, everybody, we're back to audio again. We had these issues yesterday, so Drew, we can still hear my sweet pipes, but I guess you won't have to look at my face. So sorry about that. We're working behind the scenes. So without further ado, we'll get into Adam Schefter's notebook. And now this is the second time that I've heard this, Drew. So this first rumor, we'll read what Adam Schefter has in his piece, but a few weeks ago, and we hadn't had an opportunity to get it to a show yet. So it has not really been discussed on Boy Green Daily. But NFL insider Albert Breer said a player to watch if you're looking for a curveball for the New York Jets. And he gave all these prefacing things of I think this is too high at 7. Maybe it could be a trade down situation. But Jade A of Texas. And I'm like, wow, I haven't heard that at all during the Jets draft cycle. And I said, that's fascinating. And then this morning, again, Adam Schefter does this. So there's two things I want to highlight. First off, he had a section of his article on players that could be drafted higher than you think. And in that piece, in that section of the article, we'll get into the rest of the players in a minute because I'd love to get your thoughts. But he had Jade A. He has generated less talk than some other prospects at his position, but both are expected to go higher than some people realize. Kelvin Banks Jr. was the other one. But he has Barron being linked to the Jets. And then specifically in his Jets section on Jade A. He just talked about that he is in play for the Jets at 7. So let me just throw it over to you because I've heard that a lot. He's a corner kind of do-it-all man for Texas. It doesn't look like the Jets need an immediate corner, but Jade A, Jets 7. Have you heard anything about this?
Yeah, so I think we were talking before the show about what we were going to talk about today, and just talking about the news that we heard around the league. And the thing that I wanted to bring up was one of them was Jade A. And I think the two players that I think people are going to see go a lot higher than they think are Jihad Campbell. People have kind of caught up to Jihad Campbell, but also Jade A. The league's in love with these two guys. And I think Emeka Egbuka can be thrown in there too, because the league's a lot higher on him too. But those three players, I think, are probably the three that killed the interview process the best, and that's why the NFL loves them so much more than draft media does. And Jade A, I think it's not surprising at all for him to go on the top 10. And honestly, I've heard a lot of smoke to the Raiders at 6, which is what I wanted to bring up today.
What?
So that I think the Raiders, Pete Carroll loves Jade A. So the question is, does he make it to the Jets at 7? He's currently 17th on my board. I like Jade A. I think he's a potentially all-pro nickel as a rookie. Incredibly cerebral player. That's why the NFL loves him on the whiteboard. You can see it on film. He's a very, very smart player. He recognizes things happening in front of his eyes quickly. Again, I don't know that just from a pure need perspective, I think it's a little rich for the Jets at 7. I understand you got a brand new defensive head coach in there trying to get the new system involved there. But with the talent that I think, with kind of the new things that have materialized in the time before the draft, in this like period where things are real, I think there's going to be a lot of good talent there at 7, and I think it's probably a little rich for Barron. But I think there's probably every team past like the top 5 and the top 10 are in play for Jade Barron because the NFL loves him so much.
So what is Barron? Because again, on the surface for the Jets, they have their 3 starters. Sauce Gardner, yep, we know that guy. Michael Carter II, who was previously the highest paid nickel corner in football. Okay, he's got a job. And then this offseason, they signed Brandon Stevens, a veteran corner from Baltimore, on a 3-year deal for $36 million. And the further we've gotten away, that's the one that created a lot of eyebrows raised in Jets fandom land, like, who the hell is this guy? Why are we paying him so much money and all this? And the more we've gotten away from it, NFL insider Tom Pelissero said this dude had a ton of interest. Like, teams were all over this guy, and Jet fans still go like, wow, what's going on here? So is he a corner? Is he a safety? Is he some joker position, star position, somewhere in between? What's your judgment on who Jade Barron is positionally?
So to me, it's very similar to Cooper DeJean of last year at Iowa, where it's guys that I see purely as a nickel. In a pinch, like if you absolutely had to, could you push him to the outside? Probably, but that's not where you want him finding his long-term success on the outside, because I think the size limitations are too much. And I think he works so well. He's not like a limited athlete necessarily, but I don't think he quite has the top-end athleticism, like the twitchiness to play on the outside. But I think because of how cerebral he is and how smart and kind of captain of the defense he is, that he works a lot better as that apex defender, that inside slot guy. So I also probably wouldn't try him as safety. People have floated out that trying to try him in the back of the secondary. I don't know that he's quite rangy enough for that, or big enough. For me, he's a pure nickel. Some people have him on the outside. I can understand why, but I think his real path to success, I mentioned I think he has all-pro nickel potential. People have turned that into an insult, like where you call a guy a nickel. You think you're penciling him in this tiny little box. He's not that good on the nickel, but the nickel in the modern NFL defense has become one of the most important positions. So I think that's why the NFL is also so high on Jade Barron, because I believe they see him as a nickel too, but I think the NFL sees how important that position is today.
If the Jets took Jade Barron with the 7th overall pick, your grade and reaction would be what?
My grade would probably be like a B minus, because I like Jade Barron, the player. I think Jade Barron is going to be in the league. He's going to be a starting contributor in the league, probably, Pro Bowl, borderline all pro for, close to a decade. I think he's that good of a player. It's just from a pure where the Jets are as a team right now. I think there are other better avenues to go to build the roster up. But I don't think, when you have a guy who I think is as good of a player and has a high of a floor as Barron does, I don't think you can hate that pick.
All right, let's stay on Barron for a second. You said the whispers that you heard were potentially to Las Vegas at 6.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That is.
Interesting. Another one that we've heard at 6, we talked about this on the show yesterday, and we heard this from Rich Cimini, so now this is the second person we're hearing this from, is that, the most popular mock draft pick, according to the analytics of all the mock drafts in all the world, is Armand Membou, the offensive tackle out of Missouri, to the Jets. That's the most commonly mocked thing in this universe over the last couple of months. But Rich Cimini indicated yesterday that may not even be on the table to pick because of the Las Vegas Raiders emerging as a guy for Armand Membou. Adam Schefter this morning in his draft intel notebook, which, by the way, there's a direct link in the YouTube description down below too, he says that Missouri offensive tackle Armand Membou now looks like a, quote, top 10 lock, with the Raiders and Jets being the possible destinations. Have you heard anything about Armand Membou to Vegas?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's you kind of have to group in 5, 6, and 7 all together when you talk about these picks. I think those 3 are the most interesting first dominoes to fall. I think probably the top, there could be a surprise at 4 or whatever it is, but I think the top 5 is going to be generally uninteresting. We can talk about Will Campbell here at 4 in a minute. That's one that has been interesting. But I think 5, 6, and 7, because we talked briefly at the end of last show about what the Jaguars might do and how that affects who's there at 7. And I still stand by the fact that I think, Jalen Walker is in play. We talked about Armand Membou. I think there's a question. I don't know if Armand Membou makes it out of the top 5. Does he make it to Vegas?
Sure.
But also, I think Genty has picked up a ton of smoke to Jacksonville. And Schefter, I haven't gotten a chance to read it. He may have mentioned that. to Jacksonville. But I think Genty, I mean, at this point, I think he might be the most likely pick. I think Jalen Walker's still definitely in play. Mason Graham is still definitely in play.
Wait, Genty is most likely to whom?
Jacksonville.
Wow. Okay.
And like,
right.
I mean, absolutely, the other guys that we talked about are still in play. Like Mason Graham, he is their new GM's type of defensive tackle. We saw him take Braden Fisk and Kobe Turner out of in LA. Those are his type of defensive tackles. So definitely still in play. But I think Genty is incredibly likely. I don't know if Armand Membo is still absolutely in play for Jacksonville. So does he make it to 6? Like 5, 6, and 7, it's all going to be dependent on what the 2 teams before them do, because there's probably 3 or 4 players that will all go in that stretch. It's just a matter of what order do they go in.
All right, a couple of things here. First off, shout out to my father, who's currently in the air, and he paid for the Wi-Fi package on his plane. So salute to my father, who's watching Boy Green Daily from the skies over Atlanta. God bless. Yeah, life must be pretty damn good. We have 300 people in the room. Make sure you guys like the video, hit subscribe. And boy, this is just juicy. We're getting some notebook dumping here, and it's draft week, which is incredibly exciting. Here's another thing I read in Schefter's piece for a possibility at 5. And I'm like, whoa, what? I had not been thinking about this, which again, you have to have your mind open to other possibilities. Ted McMillan, Tater Tot McMuffin to the Jacksonville Jaguars at 5. And the reasoning is there's a longer explanation in the article, but Liam Cohen, Jacksonville, Liam Cohen could see Mike Evans and Ted McMillan. You add that in, that's sort of the comp and comparison that was made. Have you heard any Ted McMillan to Jacksonville smoke? And what's your reaction to that?
Now, putting my, we talked about Ted McMillan, my personal eval of him and my opinions of him and why I see him a little bit lower, but just from a pure insider standpoint, just from what I've heard, I could not sell this any harder. I think there's probably more of a chance that Ted McMillan falls out of the first round than he does go in the top 5.
Zoinks. Okay.
I don't think he does fall out of the first round, but I also think there's zero chance he goes in the top 5. I think you're probably looking at him more in that late teens to early 20s range for Ted.
Yeah, because that one was fascinating because, again, Ted has been sort of all over the place. Very early in the mock drafting process, I've seen him to New England at 4. I was kind of like, okay, because they were desperate for pass catchers. That was pre-Stephon Diggs news. And then as things have sort of floated, there was some New England at 4. There's some Jets at 7, Cowboys at 12. They kept slipping. So it's interesting to hear, like, whatever the real pulse is, which is fascinating. So, yeah, that one sort of caught me off guard. There's no question about it.
I think he's kind of like the inverse of a Jade A, where like this is a guy that the NFL is way lower on than draft media is, a guy that probably didn't nail the interview process quite as well. And I think the NFL is more realistic about his skill set than draft media has been. So I think he's probably a guy we're going to see. People are going to really question that fall on draft night, but I think when you look at it, it's just kind of similar to what Shedeur Sanders has done, where the NFL has just always been there. Draft media wasn't.
All right, I'll just give you this note from Adam Schefter, and your reaction to it. You buy it, you sell it. There is not an elite offensive tackle in this class.
I mean, I think your definition of elite probably depends, changes the answer to that question a lot. But if we're talking about like a blue chip offensive tackle, I would agree. I'd buy that.
Okay. And in a similar vein, no cornerback in the eyes of evaluators is a can't-miss prospect in this class.
See, again, do we see Travis Hunter as a corner? Because I've always had him as a corner, and I think Travis Hunter is the best corner I've ever graded. Is as close as you can get to a can't-miss corner. So if we're talking about Travis Hunter as a corner, I disagree. I'm selling that. But if we're not, because there's been a lot of buzz about him as a receiver. If we're looking at Travis Hunter as a receiver, then I would buy that.
Yeah, because here's my gut right now of what I believe is going to happen in this draft. I believe Cam Ward goes number 1 to Tennessee. Thank you, everybody. God bless. I'll see you later. No. So I got Cam Ward, Tennessee. Travis Hunter to Cleveland. In that case, I believe he'd be playing more wide receiver, but maybe they allow him to play both. We'll see whatever happens. 3, Giants are like, well, for lack of a better thing, I guess we're taking Abdul Carter. I'm sure they would have preferred Travis Hunter, but it is what it is. We'll take the really good player. And then all of a sudden, let's get funky at 4 with New England, where it could be Armand Membu. I've heard the recent buzz about Ashton Genty. That would be wild. And I've heard a lot of different stuff there at 4, whether it's offensive tackle, whichever is the choice, Membu, Will Campbell, Ashton Genty, which I'm like, wow, that would be wild. And then, or whoever Mike Vrabel's favorite defender is, which could have been Mason Graham or Jalen Walker or what have you. What have you heard to New England at 4?
New England is such a weird one in this class because it feels like it should be an easy one to pencil in because it's just going to be the 3 blue chip guys up top, and then it's just the first, next best player after that. But we cycled through probably 7 or 8 picks that we thought were a lock at 4. And you mentioned the Genty thing that started to come up now, which is baffling to me. I don't know how you can look at that roster in New England, all of the holes and all of the things that Drake May has been through, and you think, hey, we're going to give you a running back with the 4th pick. But I don't know that I necessarily. It's weird. We've gone through all these. I don't know that I buy any of them since Armand. I still think Mimbo is the guy because you look. He is considered the OT1 across basically the entire league. Will Campbell has started picking up smoke. We've gone full circle. Will Campbell has started picking up smoke again now at the end of the draft. And again, I buy more about Will Campbell slipping out of the top 10 than I do him going that high.
Wow. Okay.
And I still think we haven't moved past Armand Mimbo. I think that the Patriots are smarter than that. They understand they need to protect Drake May, and that Armand Mimbo is kind of generally considered the number 1 guy.
Okay, fascinating. Okay, we've got a YouTube super chat shout out here. Every time we get one of those, we hear from my daughter Zariah Luna. Let's go.
Wow.
It's hard to put into words. J-Boy here has been a member for 5 months. Thanks, J-Boy. Just screaming in all caps, draft week, baby. And I just have to say, like, it is just so hard to put into words how awesome this week is and that it's here because, like, there's been months of speculation. So now that we're just mere days away from the live stream and from the draft and everything else, it's my most exciting time of the year. It's just crazy, J-Boy. But thanks for your support. Appreciate it. And Drew's been a wonderful addition to the show. It's been so fun having Drew on. So, and we'll have him, like I said, on the live stream coming up on Thursday, baby. That's going to be absolutely exceptional. Oh, yeah, baby. Here's another thing. Okay, this is from Adam Schefter's notebook. There's a scenario in which Friday night could be more interesting and active for quarterbacks than Thursday night. Basically, he said if fewer quarterbacks are drafted in round 1, things are set to be explosive at the top of round 2, with Cleveland with pick 33, Giants at pick 34, Saints are at pick 40, and they've already been making preliminary calls to try to trade up from 40 to get to the top of day 2. And he says it's possible there could be more signal callers selected in the first 8 picks on Friday than there are through the first round entirely on Thursday. Your reaction?
To be honest with you, I don't think I've said this one on this show. I've kept this one in my pocket. It's probably my biggest flag plant for this. I think Schefter's kind of taking the easy road here. I believe in my heart of hearts as we get closer to the thing, we see 4 quarterbacks go on night 1. And
wait, say it one more time.
I think we see 4 quarterbacks go on night 1.
Oh, 4 quarterbacks in night 1. Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And who are the 4?
Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Shedeur Sanders, and Cam Ward. And again, I truly cannot wrap my head around why. I don't have a top 100 grade on anybody except for Cam Ward in this class. But when you look at my layout in my eyes, I think Shedeur Sanders is the wild card because I think Travis Hunter is the pick at 2, but I think Shedeur Sanders is absolutely still in play. I don't think that's locked in yet. I think Shedeur Sanders is still floating around in Cleveland.
Interesting. Okay.
But again, I still probably believe that's going to be Travis Hunter. The question is does he get past New Orleans at 9? I don't think so. I think you're looking, if he does, you have probably 4 or 5 teams trying to jump up into the teens to trade up for Shedeur Sanders. I still think Jalen Milroe at 21 feels like it has been, a thing that just picks up so much steam to me recently. I have a hard time seeing. There's been so much connective tissue between Pittsburgh and Jalen Milroe. That feels like such a dream connection. And I think you're probably looking at like the Rams for Jackson Dart have been a landing spot that I think is probably very realistic. Plus, you've got, probably 4 or 5 teams trying to jump in front of them to the Vikings, who only have 4 picks in this draft. They're basically confirmed to trade out of the first round already. Somebody's going to come up to get a quarterback. So if I had to put a parlay in right now, I believe that 4 quarterbacks are going to go on day 1.
I think he can make some good money on that, Drew Beatty. Entertainment purposes only, of course. But
of course.
Hey, I think some work could be done. Let's round it back. Let's round it back here and get some thoughts on it, for sure. Which is, what do you believe the Jets are doing at pick 7 overall?
Yeah, that was another one I wanted to get into at some point today, and I think that's probably one that I've gotten like the most smoke behind, the one that feels like the close thing to a confirmed thing to me. And I don't ever want to say that because the most sure plans can change overnight in the NFL, but there is like so much love between Tyler Warren's camp and the Jets. They love Tyler Warren. There's been just so much connective tissue, like I mentioned, between this whole draft season. Now again, if the 4, 5, 6 dominoes were to fall in a certain way, and a player like, I think one of Mason Graham or Armand Bimbo is going to be there at 7, and like I have a hard time not picking that if I'm the Jets. But they may go Tyler Warren anyway because they love him that much. But again, if I had to put a slip in today on who it was going to be, I would guess Tyler Warren at 7.
Okay, which brings us to the rest of Adam Schefter's sort of emptying of the notebook on the Jets, which we mentioned the Jade A thing, which is sort of interesting. But the other part was this. A prospect to watch for the Jets. The Jets, who owned the 7th overall pick, have made a concerted effort to quote-unquote move in silence this offseason, as Aaron Glenn put it at the league's annual meetings. There's been less talk in the building as we begin to focus on turnaround, blah, 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 blah. So what the Jets wind up doing is up to massive speculation and shrouded in more secrecy than usual. They recently and quietly had Penn State's Tyler Warren in for a visit, and there are certain members of their organization who are said to be enamored with the player many consider to be the top tight end in this class. Just sort of reiterating all of the things you said, Drew, and I am a massive Warren warrior. I know we've had our disagreements on certain players in this class, but I absolutely am head over heels for Tyler Warren, and I'd love to plug and play. This tight end room is godforsaken barren, and boy, could we use some optimism and positivity. So yeah, I am a Warren warrior, and I see there's a lot of people that are vehemently against it in our comment section, but there are a few Warren warriors out there that are sort of rallying.
Yep, and I hate it because I've been kind of like anti-Tyler Warren. I've come across that way just because I'm such a big Colson Loveland guy, and I've mentioned how I love that fit for the Jets. But like I said, I finalized my thing. Colson Loveland shook out at 11 on my board, and Tyler Warren is 15, so very, very close there. I still love Tyler Warren. I think he's a great player. He's still a first-round grade for me. Do I like Colson Loveland a little bit better? Sure, but again, I don't think that's a bad pick by any means for the Jets. I think Tyler Warren's another guy you could just pencil in as a guy who's going to play in the league for 10 years. He's got an incredibly high floor, so I think, regardless that you cannot hate that pick because he's going to be a contributor for a very, very long time.
We have 500 people in the room. Make sure you guys like the video, hit subscribe. That's a free way to contribute. If you have questions for Drew, super chat them in, baby, and we'll get to those here on the program. That is available if you're watching on YouTube. Feel free to do that. I want to ask you the same question I asked Nick Baumgartner last week for The Athletic, who joined me and my pop when I was in New Hampshire. And it was a question of who is a player at a position that would surprisingly be first. Again, you mentioned it, right? Colston, the world is, it's going to be Tyler Warren. Someone's like, Colston Loveland ends up being the first tight end. Or Jade A is the first corner if you have him in that way over Will Johnson or something. I will turn that to you and say
that's a really good question.
So what is the position where the player pick first is surprising to us? We're like, geez, we thought, I'm making this up. Kelvin Banks Jr., if he's the first offensive tackle off the board, all of a sudden we're like, holy blank, we thought it'd be Will Campbell, or some people thought it'd be Armand Membu. What is it in your mind, at whatever position, anywhere, it doesn't matter, that you believe someone surprising is actually going to be the first at his position?
Dude, that's a really good question. Again, I think Colson Loveland is going to go a lot higher than people think he is because that's somebody the league is much higher on, but I don't think he's going to go ahead of Warren just because, there's nobody in front of the Jets that would take Loveland, and I think Warren will probably go at 7.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of surprises that could happen in the first round, but I don't know if there's anything like that because I feel like the first, I'll put this one out there. If we don't count Travis Hunter as a receiver, I think there's a more than realistic chance that Emeka Egbuka is the first receiver off the board.
First off, I hate your guts because I've been trying to, manifest Emeka Egbuka to the Jets at pick 42, which seems less and less likely to happen. So, you mean where? Okay, give me.
I can see it at 12 to the Cowboys.
Oh my good golly!
I still think that's probably more likely. You see Matthew Golden go there. I think Matthew Golden still has the highest chance. But like I said, the league is in love with Emeka Egbuka. I think his floor is probably the low 20s.
Is there any chance of this? I've heard this absolutely nowhere. I want to make this perfectly clear. But it's just one. When I asked that question to Nick, I tried to guess what he would say. Like, where would his brain go? And one that, again, I've heard it 0 place. Omarion Hampton over Ashton Genty. That someone could have that. Is that at all possible?
There is, I think there are teams in the league that have Hampton higher. I don't think Hampton's going to go before, but I think that there is probably more than a few teams in the league that prefer Hampton's skill set to Ashton Genty's. So I don't think that's crazy at all. And I think that's probably probably a realistic sentiment for at least a few teams around the league. What was Nick's answer to that? I'd be curious.
Oh yeah, so Nick's answer, he's a big Colston Loveland guy. So
there we go.
He puts he basically I'm paraphrasing, but he said the Jets at 7, I could totally see it. Just like F it, Colston Loveland. And then again, you get that kind of shock of like, you get the Rich Eisen of, holy cow, what just happened? So, and he's a Michigan guy too, so I'm sure that would go crazy. But, all of that. He mentioned Colston Loveland, and I was trying to walk him through like other ones. Oh, could it be this? Could it be this? Could it be this? But that was the big one that he said, and I was like, noted. Okay, let me put that aside. I've heard a few other people say that too. I think we talked about it before. I think Tice said that he could just see the Jets going F it and go Colston Loveland at 7. So there's been a few little whispers about that when I've been like, okay, I got to put that on the bingo card of like that to me, because I've heard outside of those 2 or 3 or 4 people in our media world saying it, I've heard that nowhere about like from Jets people that like that could legitimately happen. So that would be a nice little stunner, especially for all the Warren Warriors out there that they went tight end and it wasn't Tyler Warren. I'm sure they'll handle that with all the civil and class that exists in the universe.
Yeah, I would be floored to see that happen on draft night. There's absolutely zero smoke behind Colston Loveland at the Jets. But if it were to happen and the fan base was just distraught on draft night, whenever I get to hop on this show, I will do everything in my power to make you people love this pick. As someone who has been a Colston Loveland truther from the beginning, I will do everything I can to turn it around, the feeling among the fan base when I come on the show during draft night.
Yeah, you will.
Again, I don't think it's going to happen, but it would be cool.
Okay. It'll be important to know your role, Drew, on Thursday, because depending on what happens is what kind of advice or insights or therapeutic nature that you may be giving on the chairs we're laying on that soft, cushy little couch. And we're talking about, I just didn't see it coming, Colston Loveland, or whatever happens. And Drew, then you just sort of have to talk us off the cliff. No. It's okay. It's okay. I know there's a shock factor here, but don't worry. This, that, or right. The jubilation of like, it's not going to happen like Travis Hunter falling to 7. No talking off the ledge necessary in a crazy situation like that. But it'll be important to understand whatever that role is, and we will see it. We'll have call-in lines and everything else on that show. I can't even imagine what the reactions are going to be, because that's the other part of this that brings us back to sort of what Schefter was talking about. And we didn't need Schefter to say it. We all knew it. The shroud of mystery around a brand new regime coming in. We're all making educated guesses on what we think. The Jets' needs are A, B, C, D, E. Well, the best players in this class are G, E, Q, R, F. All right, where do they fit in with this? Obviously, this is what they do. Aaron Glenn's a Detroit guy, defensive guy. Here are some of the things ahead on defense. That obviously means this. It obviously does not mean that. So, like, there's always this mystery around new regimes. So there is and here's the other thing. Maybe it's just me here, Drew, but like, as we've like a lot of people have basically boiled it down to, Mason Graham, if he's there, Armand Membu or Tyler Warren, it's going to be one of those 3 guys. And then I just keep saying, like, as we're like all heading down to the, to the farm and we're about to deliver this, I'm just like, is it this easy? Is it, or have we just come to this consensus, like sort of as like a massive group, right? That we all just spoke among each other. And now, hey, this is a consensus. It is what it is. And I'm like, we know nothing about this regime. Should we just be comfortable with these random 3 names that we've picked? And they're all needs and they'd all help, no doubt about it. But is it really going to be consensus? Is it really going to be one of these names? And I just go, oh, yep, it was one of the names we all talked about. Or is it going to be something else? That's what I've been talking about. Who else does that when they're laying in bed at night, right? Thinking about the 2025 NFL draft. But that's the thing that I keep repeating in my head. Is it just this simple? Is it just one of these names? Or have we oversimplified it, basically?
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's and I'm 100% guilty of this too, where we talk about things in absolutes, like they're just a surefire consensus, like you just mentioned. And I think there could not be a draft class worse for that than this year. I think we really have just kind of settled on like that. Oh, we know how this top 10 is going to play out 100%. Past the first 3 picks, it's the Wild West in this draft class. The NFL, every NFL front office sees this draft class completely different from each other. So you're going to see, especially on night 1, but especially on like early day 2, there are going to be some shocks. I mean, probably like a healthy dose, like a good handful, like probably damn near half the first round. I would say people are going to be shocked at like, this guy went this early, or this guy's still on the board in the 30s, because past the first 3 guys, I think the NFL sees everybody in about one little bracket. So because there's so much variance in this draft class and everybody's so like in the same tier, it's just going to be NFL teams choosing their preference. So you're going to see guys, like you said, that we fall in on this consensus. Everybody in draft media is just so sure we know how this is going to play out. We have no idea what's going to happen after the first 3 picks. It could be any combination of anything. It's the complete Wild West. It's a fun draft class.
Which, again, makes it obviously incredibly exciting. We have a super chat coming in. Again, keep those coming, baby, here on the program. Let's hit it.
Wow.
Thank you, EZ, for the super chat. How does Tyler Warren compared to Dustin Keller? I love the deep Dustin Keller dive here. Well, I've got both of their profiles up here. We're dating ourselves back to the 2008 draft class where the Jets did the old discount double check with multiple first-round picks. They traded back into the first round to get Dustin Keller, the tight end out of Purdue. He was 23 at the time, 242 pounds. Let's see. Let's get all the other measurables there. Born at 84, 10.38 hands, 33-inch arms. Height, he was 74 inches. For Tyler Warren, I mean, he's just a bigger human being. 6'5" or 6'6", depending on with all the different measurables that came out this cycle. It's hard to tell. 6'5", 6'6", 256 pounds. He's just a bigger boy. And the other thing is, let me double check on 40-yard dash time. What do we end up having here? Oh, I guess we never had that for Warren.
Yeah, he never tested.
Yeah, so I guess that would be. Did he end up doing it at his pro day?
I don't believe so. I don't think we ever got testing numbers for Warren.
So, okay. Then the only testing number we have for going back to Dustin Keller is 4.57 40. So I guess we have to sort of speculate on that. And here was the other thing. Not that this matters, but Dustin Keller was a late first round pick. Tyler Warren, let's talk about this with Easy Super Chat here. Tyler Warren's range starts at what and ends at what? Like, his floor is absolute whatever pick you're about to say. There's no way he falls any further than this. This is the absolute floor for him. And what's the ceiling in this draft of how high he could go, how low he could go?
Yeah, so I think the floor is an interesting conversation for Tyler Warren because I think it's a lot lower than people think.
Interesting. Okay.
The ceiling, I think it's been floated out there for the Jaguars at 5 because they have a need at tight end. Britton Strange is probably not a guy you want at 1. I don't see him going. There's any chance he goes before the Jets at 7. So I'll call the ceiling at 7, but people have mentioned 5.
Yeah,
but I think if he does not go at 7, there's a wide variety of teams that could take him, but there's also like so many other needs for those teams that I think it's just I think you could see him fall to the early 20s, honestly, if the Jets don't take him. Like I think the Colts are really in play at 14.
That's what I was just going to say.
He's been mentioned a lot there.
Yeah,
but also the Colts love Jihad Campbell, and they lost EJ Speed for agency. If Jihad Campbell was there, I think they take him over Warren. If they're both on the board, I think they take Jihad Campbell.
Even with the injury stuff, the shoulder labrum or whatever he had.
I think he's got a torn labrum and a knee injury that's lingering. Like it's going to be a continuous problem, and the NFL still loves him. So clearly he's just that good of a football mind. But I think you could see maybe like the Bucks at 19, maybe the floor probably is what I would say, somewhere around there, like late teens, early 20s.
Wow. Okay. Even bigger. Again, this is why I'm glad we're bringing on the show here. More on Warren. I've heard this one. Alan brings it up. Is Tyler Warren, and I love old school comps. So I just want to say I'm a sucker for old school comps. When we're getting pro player comps, or we're getting things back from Tyler Warren. I've heard this. I've heard both of these. So shout out to Alan Avatal here, a member of the Boy Green Coffee Club. He says, is Tyler Warren Jeremy Shockey or Dallas Clark? The Dallas Clark thing's easy because of the 44, obviously, with the jersey number. But, Shockey brings that freaky, a little bit of everything to the table. So which one is he more alike in your mind?
Yeah, people have thrown around those comps a lot. I love the Jeremy Shockey comp. I think it's a really, really good one. My two for him have been Shockey, and I think he's a bigger Kyle Juszczyk, which you don't think of Juszczyk as a tight end. But I think they're going to play very similar roles. Like how Shanahan uses an H-back is going to be very similar to how Warren is used, I think. And that's, again, neither one of those comps are insults by any means, any stretch of the imagination. I think the meanness level and the blocking are very similar between Shockey and Warren. I think they're very similar after the catch. They're both incredibly hard to bring down, very physical with the ball in their hands, great runners. I think Shockey's probably a little bit more physical at the catch point than Warren is. And again, that's saying a lot about Jeremy Shockey because Warren is very physical at the catch point. Yeah. But I think the Shockey comp is probably one of my favorites for Warren. I love that one.
All right, let's go to this because I've been sort of in the ballpark of Kyle Clifton that I would just say overall, I love this tight end draft class. And again, I can go name deep of Terrence Ferguson's, Gunnar Helms, Harold Fannin Jr., Mason Taylor, Elijah Arroyo, and then obviously there's all the ones at the top of Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. And there's so many names. And I start getting deep in what I believe is third, fourth, fifth round. I'm like, holy crap, I love all these guys. But what's the real question here? So Kyle Clifton, member of the Boy Green Coffee Club, he sends this in for our audio-only listeners. Big drop-off after top 2 tight ends. Don't be fooled by a class that is deep in draftable competence, especially the Jets, who have absolutely, again, nothing at the tight end position. So, right, anything is an upgrade over whatever we have, I guess. So that's part of the perspective. But do you agree with this take from Kyle that, okay, everyone keeps talking about this tight end class being deep, but what's the difference when we're talking deep? What's the difference between if I draft a Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland at the top, who I assume are the consensus top 2 tight ends in this class, versus everybody else?
Yep. Now, for me, this is probably more of a hot take on my end. And I think I would agree with the question generally because Elijah Arroyo's injuries are so concerning. But as pure players, so not as prospects, because again, the medical red flags are really bad. That's why he's going to fall. But just purely their tape, I think Elijah Arroyo is closer to Warren and Loveland than any other tight end is closer to Arroyo. I think Elijah Arroyo is incredible. I think he's been extremely underrated. And I understand why, because the injuries are very scary. So he's going to fall there. But like, I don't have Elijah Arroyo. I think he's probably like 20 or 18, 20 spots below Warren on my board. So they're close. Like, I think Elijah Arroyo is basically in that same bracket as those guys. It's just the injury concerns. So because of that, I would agree that it's kind of a 2 tight end class as far as getting starters goes. I think Terrence Ferguson belongs in that conversation, close to that conversation. I think he's underrated. But generally, I would say there's probably kind of falls off a cliff after Loveland and Warren.
Fascinating. So let me say this. I wave a magic wand. Elijah Arroyo has no medical concerns whatsoever. Where does he rank on your big board?
I mean, even with the injury concerns, he's currently 32nd on my board. So I mean, he's probably a first round grade for me, and probably in the early 20s. So.
Oh, baby. Okay. Again, because like, how can you not be tantalized by the ooh and the ahs of the possibility, right? Because that's really what we're all in. Everyone's undefeated right now in the offseason. We're all 0-0. We're all in first place. Hope is at a premium. The draft is the encapsulation of hope, of like, teams in the NFL all the time go from worst to first, or, in the Jets case, third to first, or whatever it's going to be. It happens all the time. And the hope is the draft of finding these guys that we draft now. And then you fast forward a couple months. How in the hell did this guy fall to the 3rd round, 4th round, whatever it is? So it's hard not to be tantalized, quite frankly, when you see the glimpses, the flashes. But then sometimes you get your hand in the cookie jar, and then the highs and everything that you saw were in glimpses for a reason. Elijah Arroyo could be the health concerns or what have you, and you don't get the thing that you were, kind of craving, the thing you were dreaming of, the thing you were just, that was just not quite reachable with your grasp. That was just outside it. So there's a little bit of that happens, I guess, with the draft too, of drafting and hoping for the highest film that you saw versus the lowest. Because I bring this up all the time with Kyle McCord, this guy. I'm a massive Kyle McCord guy. I'm completely biased, obviously, being here in town and covering Kyle McCord. But Jesus, the tape against Pitt on Thursday Night Football, with it being a huge moment in the season for Syracuse. Everyone's watching. Pitt's undefeated. Syracuse is having hopes and dreams of playing in the college football playoff. Good Lord have mercy. Kyle McCord imploded with pick sixes. I think he had 3 pick sixes in the first half and 4 interceptions. And people tell me, why does Kyle McCord not get more love? I'm like, well, his worst tape is god awful. Like, there's a lot of great tape, but like, I'm curious, Drew, bring it back to you as an evaluator. When you see tape that's really good, right? Kyle McCord led college football in passing yards last season. So, yeah, he had a pretty good season. He shattered the Deshaun Watson previous record. But also there's that game that I just mentioned, which is just awful. And I felt like I was in a bad nightmare. I can only imagine how Kyle McCord felt in the middle of that game. How do you judge that when you see that shitty-ass film here? And again, it's a small example, but it's still – it's once it's out there in the universe, it's still part of the picture as we're painting this canvas that has to be considered in it. But how much is that considered versus the great tape that was shown for a lot of the season?
Yeah, and I think it boils down to really who the evaluator is and how you look at things, like whether you're a floor versus ceiling guy. I think I kind of have an idealistic view of things where like you're looking at these guys where you're judging off of their best film because as NFL coaches, it's your job to get that level of play out of these guys. And to come to Kyle McCord's defense a little bit, I'm generally out on this quarterback class as a whole beyond Cam Ward, but to come to McCord's defense, it was a 5 interception game against Pitt, right? And I will say 3 of those interceptions were not his fault at all. That stat sheet looks terrible. I've watched that game before because it's just like hilarious to see the stat sheet. 3 of those were completely out of his hands. 2 of them were bad, but like the other 3, that's a perfect example of how the stat sheet lies. You need film to contextualize things. And to throw another old school comp out there, one of my favorites in this class, Kyle McCord is Jay Cutler to a T. They are the same person.
I love that honestly, comp. I haven't heard it, but I love that.
If you're going to draft a guy on mid to late day 3 like Kyle McCord is going to go, like I think Kyle McCord is a 34th-ish best quarterback in the league, like a very top-end backup for a long time in this league. So I think Kyle McCord is good.
Which, by the way, is incredibly valuable. I mean, you know.
People don't understand it.
Yeah. I think you're right because Connor Rogers was just talking about this of NBC Sports and everywhere else that Connor Rogers is that when you're, you know, obviously when we're taking a quarterback at the top, anybody, any team, it doesn't matter. Obviously, you're swinging for your franchise quarterback, but there's also an evaluation process where you're like, you know what, this guy's just an amazing backup. And that's an incredible, valuable resource. And if he has to step in, maybe he ends up, we think he's here and he ends up being here. Right? You mentioned a 32 to 34, maybe he's 20, I don't know. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, that's even better than we thought on the highest projection he could be. And you get sort of surprised in the quarterback draft evaluation process, which is fascinating too. So Jay Cutler, that's funny. I haven't heard that anywhere, but now I'm never going to be able to unsee that just because Kyle McCord's game is so Jay Cutler. That's hilarious.
He's a gunslinger, man, through and through.
Yeah, I love that. And again, you're going to get moments where you're like, holy friggin' crap, look at that throw. And then, oh, dear Lord, what's that?
Yeah.
Which is it's a fun part of the process. All right, Drew, let's do this. We have more nuggets and notes to get to from Schefter, but I'd be, ashamed if I didn't open up the phone lines for the fans and try to get a mix in between that and our Schefter analysis of the draft and more notebook stuff from you. So we'll open up the phone lines if you guys would like to call in. We have 600 people in the room. I appreciate it. Humbled by it. Thank you very much. Like the video, hit subscribe. We got Drew Beatty here at Iron City Film on Twitter and X. He is one of the many draft professors for draftprofessor.com. Baby, make sure you check out his work on the X machine. Again, that's at Iron City Film. We're going to play a quick HEP timeout. And Boyd Green Daily will continue after this with your phone calls. That is youtube.com/BoydGreen25.
Boyd Green Daily, Boyd Green Daily, Boyd Green Daily. Talking Jets football, man. Boyd Green Daily, Boyd Green Daily, Boyd Green Daily. New York Jets Football Club. Offense, defense, special teams. Watch Jets football with Boyd Green. J-E-T-S. Jets. Let's go.
Let's go, baby. Shout out to the legend Hep. It is draft week. You see the draft spectacular. I had to get the most juice out of this orange after Gator made this spectacular. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it, the flashing lights and everything. This will, of course, be our background for our draft live stream spectacular coming up on Thursday, April 24th. Again, it will be a 4+ hour live stream. We'll go start at the top of the draft and go all the way through with special guests throughout it, including the handsome devil, Drew Beatty himself. He'll be on that program, baby. All right, let's go to the phone lines. Keep the super chats coming and everything else. And again, we'll continue to go through Schefter's notebook, some fascinating stuff in there as well. Rick in New York is here on the program.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hey, excellent.
Good.
Drew, are you comfortable enough with our group now? Can I come at you today? No, I'm just joking.
For sure. Always.
I'm
You've done that week 1.
However, what you said about there not being a corner that looks like they could be a sure thing in this class.
Outside of Travis Hunter, right?
Mm-hmm. Can you read these cards for me?
Can you read that, Drew? What does that say?
As, right? As.
Okay.
Oh, is this going to be Azrae Thomas? Because I'm a huge Azrae Thomas guy.
Yeah,
or Azariah, I think is how you pronounce it.
Azariah. Yes.
Yep.
I love the show and tell here. Very nice, Ricky. Go ahead, Drew. Defend
listen,
yourself.
See, it's terrible because like I like consider myself the biggest Azaria Thomas guy throughout this whole process. Again, he's like the very highest second round grade you can get for me. I had him and Will Johnson damn near like equal at the top of the second round.
Mhm.
I think it really just borders down to like what you want in a defensive scheme between who you pick between those two guys. But Azaria Thomas is outstanding, man. Like I love this guy coming into the Senior Bowl. He had a great Senior Bowl week. Coming out of the Senior Bowl, incredible. He's my favorite type of corner. Like I love the lanky, physical press man coverage corners. And Azaria is just a junkyard dog at the line of scrimmage. I mean, he's going to fight. Just going to hand fight like Mike Tyson at the line of scrimmage. He has crazy long arms, very sticky man coverage. I think he can kind of get lost at the catch point sometimes, which is the one thing keeping him out of the first round for me. I still think he should be a first round player, but I only have 22 first round grades in this class. So that's the one thing I have on him, but he's one of my favorite corners. He's my corner 2 in this class. So.
Yeah, he's going to go in the first because when you get towards the very end of the first, Baltimore, Buffalo, Detroit, like all those teams that are back there, it says somebody's going to grab him at the end of the first. I really believe. And like, yeah, he's like, with the length and as fast as he is for that size, he's like Antonio Cromartie that can tackle. Like,
like
which
that.
not that Cromartie couldn't tackle, but like you said, Azrael, he'll get in there and just stick his nose right in there, which a lot of corners don't like to tackle, but he's not one of them. So, yeah. And then let me ask you, this isn't your first year evaluating draft picks, right? Like you were doing.
It actually is.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah. Okay. I was going to ask you if you did any work on the draft last year.
I mean, I have like done. I had evaluated draft picks last year, but this is my first year really putting like a full board together. So I guess technically I was in the draft space last year, but like I didn't consider myself a full evaluator until this year, if that makes sense. But I was like in the draft space last year.
Okay, well let me flash back to last year's draft a little bit, and we're gonna say pre-injury. Let's leave the injury and everything that's happened since then out of it. Jordan Travis, tell me your thoughts. And if he was in this year's class, where would he rank?
I think, unfortunately, he's probably the same caliber in last year's as he is this year, even without the injury. I just don't really see a path to success for Travis because of the athletic limitations. I think for a guy who's as limited of an athlete as he is, you have to be like damn near perfect between the ears as a quarterback to really survive with, like I said, the limitations that he has. And we haven't seen Travis play in the league yet, so he could be. We haven't really gotten to see him a chance to see him play,
or practice for that matter because of the injury.
Exactly.
So.
But I think like everything has to go right for a guy who's kind of just like a very, very below average at best athlete for him. So that's just my main concern with him. I think he's accurate. I think he's got good mechanics, good repeatable, clean mechanics. But we haven't seen him since the injury, and even before that, I still would have worries about his NFL level of athleticism. But I would be interested to see him at least get a chance before I put a final nail in that coffin.
Right. Like he doesn't have the strongest arm and stuff like that. But what I liked about him is like, even when he scrambled, you could see that he was always keeping his eyes downfield. Like, even though he could run, he was always looking to throw it first. He got better each year, and then that last year, 20-something touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. Like he really took care of the ball a lot better. And dude, he's dangerous when he takes off and runs. Like that part of his game, I think would be fine. But, throwing the ball, yeah, like he would have to be, like you said, in a really, really good situation. However, I could see Travis as being a good to very good backup for years in the league to come myself. Like, I don't know if he's going to be a starter, but I could see him being like, this is maybe a lazy comp, but Tyrod Taylor, bouncing around here to there, spot duty here to there. And who knows, one of those weird games, somebody gets hurt, he comes in and maybe for the last 11 minutes, he can give you something like that kind of guy. But all right. Yeah. I was just curious to hear what your thoughts on that were, but I'll let some other people get in here. I'm sure there's other people with questions, but yeah, I said I wasn't going to talk about the draft anymore until it happens because I just had it. I just had it. Like 2 days from now, like there's going to be a video. Adam Schefter's mailman predicts this happens, and we're all going to react to it because we've reacted to everybody else by now. But
that's true.
Anyway, Ricky. All right, guys, have a great day.
There he is. Thanks for the call, Ricky. Appreciate it. Beautiful. We have 630 people in the room right now. Like the video, hit subscribe. There is a draft prospect, Drew Beatty, that we have not asked you about since you joined us on the show. Are you ready to talk about a prospect that you have
always
not discussed? Let's throw an image of this individual on the screen. And it is this man. I will throw him on the screen now for our viewers. This man is Florida defensive tackle Desmond Watson, who has a chance to become the heaviest draft pick in NFL history at 464 pounds. What can you tell me about this behemoth of a man?
So, like, Desmond Watson is going to get drafted on mid to late day 3. Like, it is a surefire thing because just for the comedic value at this point. He's like, and I think there is a role for him at a certain level because of that just really absurd size. I don't think this is a guy that's ever going to give you any pass rush impact at all. Not a guy you could have on the field for very long because the stamina issues are a thing. But just from a sheer size and run stopping perspective, the guy's like the best gap plugger. Like, you could not make a better one in a lab at 460 pounds. Like, he's got an immovable anchor in run defense. He's gonna knife through double teams. Like, the guy, just as a pure rotational run defender, I think there is a spot for him on a roster. Absolutely.
Man, and I look at the thing this is really true for people that are like, wait a second, is this real? This is 100% real. I'm not kidding. This guy, Desmond Watson, he's a Florida defensive tackle. He measured in at 464 pounds. He has a chance to become the heaviest draft pick in NFL history. That is 1,000% true. Massive man. And you would think with a guy that is this uniquely large that, like, come on, he's got to play like 5 snaps or something. But if you look at the PFF analytics of like defensive snaps played, he played 418 snaps last year, or excuse me, that was 3 years ago. But over the span of all of these different seasons, he played 307 defensive snaps last year, 175 in 2023, and 418 in 2022. So he's getting on the field. It's kind of crazy. But like, when you put this mammoth of a man on the program, on the field, like, how do you move this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so you say he's going to be drafted. Where do you think Desmond Watson gets selected? Where do you think that happens?
I mean, I think depending on where, like, that role just as a pure rotational run defender, kind of gap plugger comes in, like how teams value that. I think anywhere from like the early 6th round all the way to the end of the draft, maybe even like the late 5th at the earliest. I think you can see him go anywhere in that range, just depending on where NFL teams value it. And the craziest part is like, this guy's a good athlete for that size. Like, he's gonna move, and he ran like a 5.4, like low 5.
Yeah, let me see his pro day, right? Yeah,
like that. Somebody scaled that down. I saw it on Twitter somewhere. I forget who it was, but like, him running the 40 he did at 464 pounds is the equivalent of like an average receiver running in the low 3s for a 40 time.
Wow.
Which, like, I mean, he's a person to move at 460 pounds like he did at his 40 is unbelievably impressive. He doesn't really ever get a chance to show that on film because of what his role is. But I mean, he's an outstanding athlete for that size.
Yeah, here is for like kind of the story at Florida. Shout out to Yahoo Sports here and the Associated Press. As a sophomore, he played at 415 pounds. As a junior, he played at 435 pounds. As a senior, he jumped to 449 pounds. And then he added an additional 15 pounds, which took him to this 465 plus number since the end of the season. So that is unfriggin' believable. I mean, this is crazy. So, yeah, here are some of the numbers. A 5.93 40-yard dash and a 25-inch vertical at Florida's Pro Day.
That is absurd.
That is Desmond Watson. That is unbelievable. So, yeah, those are the numbers. So, again, that is a 5.93 40-yard dash and a 25-inch vertical. You know, it's funny, right? So you're like, oh, my God, this guy was 465 pounds. He runs the 5.93 40. Rich Eisen has run Rich run where he's raising money for St. Jude's. And now it used to be done at the combine, the 40-yard dash, and then we all see it back in late February, early March. But because of how they've done their charitable functions, they actually tape it privately at normally the Rose Bowl, and then they release it, during like day 3 of the draft. And Rich Eisen ain't getting 5'9" on a 40-yard dash, and he's like whatever 200 or 300 pounds smaller.
He's like 4 Rich Eisens. So
that's right. Yeah, what's the math on that? Yeah, that's a lot of Rich Eisens happening there. So Desmond Watson, okay, want to make sure I get it there. Now, I'm sure you probably don't love to do what I'm about to ask you to do, but hey, you know what? It's part of the draft process here. Who are the players that you think have massive bust potential in this class? And the question sort of sprung because I was watching Flight Plan. It's a local Jets podcast with Zach Rosenblatt, who works for The Athletic, Tim McMaster works for The Athletic, and Connor Rogers is on the show. And they were talking about a player that I was sort of excited about as a potential trade down option for the Jets if that does indeed come to fruition. And it was Nicky Manwari, the South Carolina safety, who just, again, if you want to call Combine Warrior stuff, then so be it. And maybe I'm a victim of that, of seeing the size, the measurables, the numbers, and then you just compare that historically. I'm just like, wow, I'm wowed. But Connor Rogers said that he has massive bust potential because of what he believes he could be at the NFL level. So that sort of sparked the question of, so feel free to comment on any of that on Nicky Manwari, but is there anyone else that in this class has massive bust potential in your mind that there's some risk it to get the biscuit here?
Yeah, like I understand the Nick Manwari hesitation, and I'm probably a bad witness call to stand with him because I've been like the biggest Nick Manwari guy throughout this entire process.
Great.
He's one of my
There you
favorites.
go.
He's 14th on my big board right now. Like I love Nick Manwari, but I like there is reservations. Like there's problems with him in coverage. He's a raw player in coverage. You're going to have to develop up. But it's kind of like I mentioned in our Boomer Bust episode. Like when you have a league that is such a hard transition for players to go into a league of world class athletes, like the guy who is the world-class athlete out of the world-class athletes is going to have a smoother transition because you can fall back on the fact that he is a generational athlete at the position. He's always going to have a floor in that athleticism. So while he may not ever blossom into the coverage or the level of player in coverage that you need him to be, he's always going to have some role just as a fly around box safety, just going to knock people's lights out because you have a guy of that size who can move like he can and has the kind of range he does. So depending on where he gets drafted, I think, again, the definition of a bust is kind of in flux, but so he may not ever develop into what you want him to be in coverage, but I think he's always going to be in the league in a certain role because of the floor of that athleticism. But as far as other guys who sorry, you
go ahead. No, I was just gonna say it's good to sort of clarify that, right? Because what's a bust, right? A Jets podcast probably has plenty of material to describe and point at different exhibit A, B, C, D, E on what busts look like. There's no question about it. So, yeah, you were about to jump into it. My next question, who are some other ones in this class that sort of fit that potential category?
Yeah, for me, Will Campbell's the first guy that really jumps out to me, which feels weird because he's such a technically sound player to me. But I think him and Kelvin Banks are the two that people have talked about as such like highly touted, very high draft picks. They're both probably going to go in the first round this week. But the combination of issues that these guys have really, really scare me. And Will Campbell to a lesser extent because we know the NFL loves his personality and his football mind, which gives you a little bit more confidence to him. But the problem with Will Campbell is just the pure athletic limitations. For a guy who has the foot speed concerns that he does and the range issues, even if you kick him inside, I don't think he's strong enough to make up for the athletic limitations. You see the upper body strength has some fun flashes. You see some crazy highlight finishes on some blocks, but I think the lower body strength is really lacking. He lets guys into his frame too easily. I don't think the anchor is where it should be for a guy who's going to let guys into his frame like he does. Kelvin Banks, to me, the balance issues are the scariest thing. He ends up on the ground probably 76% of snaps that he plays.
Wow.
And I like that combined with the range issues, like I'm talking about with Campbell, he's got some major athletic limitations as well. People are talking about kicking him inside to guard, which may solve the range issues, but I think it's going to make all the other issues worse when you put him up against guys who are going to automatically win the leverage battle on the inside. So those two guys are the first ones to jump off to me. I think Ted McMillan is absolutely up there as well. Now, I think Ted is always going to be able to contribute as a solid big slot. But when you're talking about a guy you're potentially taking in the top 5, like we mentioned earlier, I just have never seen him on that level at all. He's currently 49th on my board. Wow. And I mean, that's just not a guy I see in the range he's talked about at all. I think he's guys that are not natural separators, which he is not even close. Guys that struggle with press man coverage like he does, and it's like he looks like the frame like a Rottweiler, but he's like one of those tiny little lap dogs as far as like the actual fight in him.
Oh, so the Tarzan Jane?
Yeah, it looks like Tarzan plays like Jane. It's like for a guy that massive that he is, like that super long, lanky physical frame, he does not play physical at all. He really lets himself get pushed around. So those are things that scare me with Tet. I think those are really the main guys that I'm a lot lower on than most, and guys I think that really have like the really low floors for me, versus at least guys that are talked about in that top like upper echelon of prospects.
Who is sort of in that same range? I guess this is sort of to your point, the Boomer Bust show that we did before, but who is a player that it's risky, but the potential reward is so massively high, and that's what teams will be weighing whether or not to take, because again, sort of that dreaming thing we talked about earlier, we think they could be, Patrick Mahomes, I guess, is like the golden boy of like what he could be or what he could not be. Again, this boom bust thing. But who is the player that has a potential for massive reward, but it's risky?
I think, like I mentioned, how I didn't think Shamar Stewart was a boomer bust player in general.
Correct.
He's always going to have a floor as a run defender, but as a pass rusher, I think I mentioned that he was very boomer bust in that role. If you get to the ceiling, if you really coach his hand usage up, Shamar Stewart has the potential to be a dominant pass rusher in the league. I think the biggest example of this, even as a guy who's incredibly low on him, has been throughout this whole process. If Jalen Milroe gets to sit for 2 years and really figures it out, there is not a more physically talented quarterback that I've ever seen than Jalen Milroe. I know we've talked about Anthony Richardson, but even then, like Milroe, you don't ever see a guy, the ball just flies out of his hand. He's got 4.2 speed on tape to me. If you get him to really sit for 2 years and really figure it out between the ears, like the sky is the limit for Jalen Milroe. He could be unbelievable if he really figures it out. I think I've mentioned Savion Williams before. I think if you actually let Savion Williams play receiver with the athletic tools that he has, the kind of separator he is, I think he could be a one of the few true wide receiver ones that are in this class. Those are really the first guys that pop to mind out of that group.
All right. Ricky New York Live says, Drew, if you tell 3 Sibs, another commenter in the chat, that Tet McMillan profiles as Corey Davis, I'll die laughing. Is there anything you'd like to respond to that?
I'm sure, both of us are intimately familiar with Corey Davis.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah. See, the thing, I think Corey Davis is a better separator than Tet was. Or is, I guess. Or Corey Davis was a better separator than Tet is.
Yeah.
Which, again, I'm going to just live on the fact that don't draft guys who can't separate. That is my just mantra through and through. You're never going to find success drafting guys who live in contested catch situations. But so people have thrown out the Corey Davis comp. I still haven't found a comp that I love for Tet. People have thrown out the N'Keal Harry thing. That's somewhat close. Yeah, I mean, not great. And again, those are stylistic. They're not saying he's going to be the level of player that N'Keal.
It's hard to separate that sometimes, but I understand.
It is. What you mean. Yeah, I just wanted to make it clear to everybody watching that I'm not trying to automatically label him as a bust. But I think there's stylistic similarities there. People have mentioned like Alan Lazard, who the Jets are very familiar with. I like that. I think he's very similar to Alan Lazard. I think Alan Lazard is more physical than he is, but they're very close stylistically, I should say. So yeah, I don't hate that. It's close enough, but again, I think Davis was a little bit of a better separator.
All right, there you go. Ricky New York Live trying to stir the pot. I appreciate that. We have nearly 800 people in the room. Like the video, hit subscribe. That's a free way to contribute if you're watching on any of our other portals or streaming live on Heavy on Jets Facebook page, youtube.com/BoydGreen25, and Twitter @BoydGreen25. Wherever you're consuming the show, we appreciate it. But the most optimal way to enjoy the program is on YouTube. That is youtube.com/BoydGreen25. Drew, is there anything else in your notebook? You mentioned it on Twitter as you reshared the live stream, which we appreciate. And say this is our last show together before the live draft stream coming up on Thursday night. Is there anything else in your notebook that you just want to sort of unload here on the program?
Yeah, just we're right here at the end. I'll just rapid fire whatever rumors I've heard that have some real smoke behind them. So back to the Colson Loveland thing. I think Colson Loveland to the Bears at 10 is a really, really potential. Not that it has any impact on the Jets at all, but that's
cool.
very
I like it. Yeah.
Very real smoke. That's very recent. That's a pretty new thing. I think Michael Williams at 15 to the Falcons has picked up a ton of smoke. That would be the one I'm most sure of. I think that's probably as close to surefire as
keep him in Georgia. I like it. Help him with moving costs,
which is weird because it puts Malachi Starks in flux because that's where like Malachi Starks, my landing spot was the Falcons 15 for him. Mike Green is one of the interesting ones to me because I think he's like 18th on my big board right now. I think he should go really early, but I think there's a stretch of teams like if he gets past that 11 to 15 range, he probably falls to the late first, like probably in that Baltimore range. Back to the quarterback debate we were having, like in that how many guys go in the first round. I think running back is a really interesting one. Do we see 3 running backs go on night 1? That's been the biggest question to me. That's really popped up recently.
Who would be the third?
Tregon Henderson out of Ohio State.
Okay.
The biggest one that's been thrown around is does Washington go running back at the end of the first? I could see Travion landing there. I think Washington's another Rosario Thomas spot to what we were talking about with Ricky earlier. So that's another massive question to me is, we talk about how many quarterbacks go on night 1. How many running backs do we see go on night 1? I think the run on receivers is really interesting. Like I already mentioned, I think Google could be the first guy off the board. I'll stand by that again, not counting Travis Hunter. I think receivers are such an interesting one in this draft because you see there's a very select few teams that need receiver, and then it's a very wide gap of guys that probably aren't going to take it in the middle of the first. So how many receivers do we see go on night 1? Luther Burden has been the biggest question is how far do we see him fall? I think there's a potential we see Burden fall to the 40s or the 50s at this point.
Whoa, mama.
Teams are scared of Luther Burden. James Pierce in the same vein, just talk about guys with character concerns that are really talented. There's James Pierce could fall to the 3rd round at this point.
Okay.
But yeah, Burden's an interesting one. Because I think he's stayed my wide receiver 1. I think he's like top 13th on my big board right now. But you're probably going to see him fall into. I would say into the 40s if I had to guess right now because teams are that scared of where he is as a personality. But as far as the Jalen Walker nugget is one we talked about too a couple times on here. I think he's in play all the way from 4 through like 19. He's a player that could fly anywhere in between that. I think the NFL loves him. I think he's in play. I don't see the Patriots pulling that trigger, but I think he's in play for them. I think he's very much in play for Jacksonville. I think the Raiders could take a shot. I don't know that I would see the Jets take that shot because I think he's very similar to like a Will McDonald, some of the guys they already have in the room. I think the Panthers have been my landing spot for him for a while. They love Jalen Walker, supposedly. But if the Panthers don't take him, I think you see him slip all the way to the back end of the teens, honestly. I don't see him get past Tampa because Tampa has such a need at both inside linebacker and edge. But Walker's another guy that could go just like very, very bipolar range with him.
All right. I think
that's about it for me. Yeah, no, that kind of ran out of my notebook.
Oh, juicy. Okay, I love it. Jets or not, again, the NFL live draft stream, while it obviously will have a lot of Jet flavor, there'll be former Jet players on. The Jets pick will happen. There'll be other Jet stuff, and the potential of the Jets trading back into round 1, of course. There will be Jet stuff, but obviously the draft will be going on. So all of these draft nuggets to me are wildly fascinating. Let's answer a couple more rapid fire questions here before we go off. And Ace Up 10, appreciate it. Good morning, BG and the Coffee Club and Drew and everybody. So thank you very much. Here are some questions. Jets Worldwide. Again, subscribe to Jets Worldwide on YouTube. What's the earliest, if he had to, would Drew draft Ohio State quarterback Will Howard?
I would probably say like the mid to late 4th round. I think I have like 6 or 7 quarterbacks with 4th round grades. Like every quarterback ended up in the 4th round for me this year. Because to me, it's just like I don't feel comfortable taking a shot on any of these guys before day 3. But I could understand why a team would take a shot on them all on high day 3. I think Will Howard is extremely accurate. Well, I wouldn't say extremely. He's had some ball placement issues, but I think the touch, like the flashes of touch, are really good. He's a really awesome ability to layer the ball over the middle of the field. But the physical limitations and the inconsistency of the film worry me with him. But I think he's a really smart player. But Will Howard's another guy who I think can be a really successful backup for a long time in this league. I don't know that I see a path to him as a starter, though.
Fair enough. All right, let's go back to the phone lines. We'll also work in a few more of your questions before we sign off. Hep joins us here on the show. What's up, Hep?
Hey, fellas.
Hey, I was wondering on the draft party. Your show starts on Thursday at what time? 8:00.
Yeah, it is 8 o'clock Eastern time. It will go through the entire draft, and a little bit after as we're just sort of closing things up and answering questions and calls and things of that nature. So it's at least 4 hours, but I've done this before. It was 2 years ago on the 2023 NFL draft live stream. I co-hosted with a comedian, and that was 5.5 hours or something. So, we will go through the entire draft, baby. That's for sure.
And Jericho's going to be on earlier in the night.
He is 8:05. So we'll start off the show, do a bang, say, "Hey, welcome to the show, everybody," and then boom, Jericho Cotchery, Jets legend, will be joining us right off the top.
That's
baby.
one of the few. That's one of the few jerseys I have. I have a Jericho, and I have a Wayne Corbett, and I have a Joe Willie. That's it.
Yeah, so I thought that'd be great again because for Drew's sake, he's the Tennessee Titans guy in the room, and we'll see. The draft starts at 8, but there's a bunch of hoopla, so we'll see officially when the Titans quote unquote go on the clock officially. But that's obviously going to be Cam Ward, so it'll be fun to talk to Jericho for a bit about his draft day story, and I can't wait. That'll be awesome on Thursday. What a way to kick off the show.
Yeah, so what are you ordering in? I think I'm going to order and get some truck food, some Mediterranean kind of a gyro kind of a thing with chicken and stuff like that.
First off, let's get Drew to answer this question first. Yeah. Drew, what's the draft day meal?
Oh, that's a tough one because it's always like I try to change it up every year. Okay. I'm kind of thinking barbecue this year. The Alabama barbecue is still the best. Nice. I'll stand by that.
Okay. All right.
I'll fight anybody on that. That's probably where I'm going to go this year.
Barbecue, that's a good idea.
Okay. Beautiful. Yeah. But yeah, whatever I have, normally, because I try to, I'm hosting a show and things of that nature. F that. Food is going to be, hopefully, I'll have to try to probably pick a cleaner food because of all the mic and beep, boop, bopping that'll be happening. But, we will have food on the show. You'll just be seeing me watching the draft, and I'll just be throwing a tender or whatever the hell is going down the throat. We'll be doing a couple of that action for sure.
Looking forward to it, guys. See ya.
Can't wait. Hap, thanks for the call. Yeah, Drew will be on that show. We'll probably get Drew midway through the first, something like that. We'll work with Drew on his schedule and other guests coming in. So we have some things to kind of sink our teeth into of what has already happened and what is to happen and the live bullets that are flying. So it's going to be a lot of fun with Drew. Drew's been a wonderful addition to the program. All right, a couple more things before we get out of here. Southern Jet Rich said, ask him if he thinks Willie Lampkin is a late round gem. And boy, what a for those who don't know, he's I'll allow Drew here to tell the story, but man, he's been a fascinating guy to watch because as a fellow vertically challenged guy in a much different way than Willie Lampkin, even shorter on that draft profile scale, it's the ultimate tell of the tape of a player you really like on tape, but the measurables say something else and you have to weigh those demons. So Drew, where are you at on Willie Lampkin?
Willie Lampkin is one of the most fun players to watch in this entire draft class. Everybody was joking at the Senior Bowl when you see this guy come out. Who is this fullback they have playing center? Because nobody, they didn't have any centers show up to the Senior Bowl, so they just had guards taking snaps at center. And Willie Lampkin is this guy who's 5'11", 270. You look at him, he doesn't belong out on the field. But what's crazy though is his wingspan. He has a longer wingspan than Will Campbell, for whatever it's worth, at 5'11". His arms are that long. But Willie Lampkin is by far and away, not even close, the meanest player in this draft class. Every single rep with Willie Lampkin is a bare knuckle bar fight. I mean, he wants to take somebody down to the ground and kill them on every single rep. He is. I would draft this guy in like the fourth, fifth round, like early on day 3, regardless of measurements, because I think he's going to find success. Not because he's like the most physically talented guy in the world, but because there is such a lack of meanness in trench guys sometimes, especially in this draft class. Like one of the few that just wants to put people in the dirt. Willie Lampkin, I think you could play him at fullback. You could play him as a blocking tight end if you wanted to. You could play him at guard, center. I think he finds success in a ton of different roles. But I think Willie Lampkin is absolutely a late round gem. I think he's going to find success for a long time in the league.
Okay, beautiful. I love it. All right, here's a special request. My father did his annual mock draft where he tried to fix the New York Jets, and we will have you immediately graded here on the show. And, feel free not to hold back. Really let him have it here. He'd really appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to throw this up. This is your first time seeing it, I imagine. So here is my father's mock draft. Let's throw this up on the big boy screen. It's a 7-round mock, and there was all kinds of trades. The trades are on the screen as well. Tell me if you can get a good look at that. If not, I can read you what is on the board here for it. Well, I guess I'll do it for audio-only listeners as well. For those who missed the Hop on Pop mock draft, he had a massive trade back in round 1, jumping back with the Denver Broncos, who, by the way, according to Adam Schefter, are interested in trading up. So that worked out very well for my pop, I guess. They traded back from 7 to 20, picked up a second and third rounder this year and a third rounder next year. And he took Matthew Golden. There's TJ Sanders, the interior defense lineman out of South Carolina, Ozzie Trapillo, Boston College tackle. Yet another crazy ass trade, and the Jets and Bills going together. And yeah, so here's the haul. What do you make of this haul? What are your initial thoughts here?
Now, again, I'm going to be as nice as I can. He did take 2 of the players I'm probably lowest on in this whole draft class, or 3 of them. So I'll dance around those. But we mentioned the Matthew Golden landing spot to the Jets before on this show, and I love that spot. I think Matthew Golden is right below the burden for my wide receiver 1. Mm-hmm. I think Golden is the most flexible and versatile receiver in this class. So I think pairing him next to somebody like Garrett Wilson would be outstanding. I think that those two could be a really, really dangerous duo. TJ Sanders is somebody the NFL sees him in this range. Like, he will go in this range. I'm a lot lower on him just because I don't think for a guy that's as small as he is in the trenches, I don't think he has quite the pass rush potential that he should for that range. And Ozzie Trapillo is another guy I'm a lot lower on because I think the very, very he's 6'8" with 31-inch arms. Like, he has very, very short arms and a huge frame. And I think there's range issues, mobility issues, and he doesn't have the length to make up for it. But it's a very technically sound player. Femi Oladejo is one of my favorites. I love Femi Oladejo. I think this is a great pick. A guy who's newly converted to edge from inside linebacker, very, very high ceiling as pass rusher. Andrew Makuba is one of my favorite safeties in this class. Good athlete, good instincts, quick trigger. I think he'd be a day 1 starting safety for New York. He fills that hole immediately. Harold Fannin, again, I don't hate it in his range, but that's a guy we've talked about that I'm a lot lower on too. I just don't. Small and slow is not a great combo in the NFL. But it's a guy who's like your second tight end to 12 personnel. I think he worked really well. We've mentioned Kyle McCord. I think right there, that's an awesome pick. A guy that's going to be on your team for at least a decade as a top end backup quarterback. I love Kyle Monungai. I think a guy that's going to be, again, in the league for at least a decade because he just does the dirty work in the shadows that nobody else wants to do. Going to take somebody's head off in pass protection. Very physical runner, good vision, high floor. Not the best athlete in the world, but just a guy that's going to do all the dirty work really, really well. So overall, I mean, with all the trades in here, I think you pick up so much future draft capital. I think this would be an outstanding scenario for the Jets overall. Even if 2 or 3 of these players aren't the guys that I'm highest on, you fill a lot of needs here, add a lot of talent, plus all the future draft picks. I think that would be a home run for the Jets.
Wow. Okay. My pop. Way to make his head even bigger. I'll see if he can fit through my door when he visits here in a couple of weeks. Wonderful. Thank you. All right. Let's finish it off with a couple more callers. Let's go to the legendary Southern Jet joining us here on the show. What's up, buddy?
Hey, can you hear me, Paul?
Loud and clear.
Oh, okay. It's the first time I've called on my iPhone. I usually call on my laptop.
All right. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, I joined a little late, so I don't know if you talked about it, but this new regime is honing in on character a little more than the past. And I'm not a Breece Hall fan as far as character. I think he's, and what I mean, I don't think he's a bad guy. I just don't think he's Mr. Jet. He's had a lot of tweets that were deleted. For sure. At the last second. I totally, and he has the right. I totally see him wanting to test free agency, and when he does, he's gone because the Jets aren't going to pay that much for a guy hurt that much. So now is the damn time to strike. So when is Hampton going to go? I'm asking Drew, which means when can we trade Breece to get a tight end or a tackle in the 7th pick, but then trade back into the first round into the 20s to get Hampton, because then we get the 4-year rookie, we get the rookie contract, all that stuff. And I think Hampton is better than Breece Hall in the long run. He's never missed a down. He's a 3-down back. I think now's the time to strike, but we got to trade Breece to make this happen.
Okay, what say you, Drew? And thanks for the call, Southern Jet.
I'm actually really glad he asked that question because this is something I meant to say in our kind of draft take purge before this. I think we see 2 running backs go in the top 10. I think Marion Hampton goes at 10 to the Bears. I mentioned Colson Loveland there as a possibility, but I think Ben Johnson pulls the trigger. He's moved away from DeAndre Swift once already. I think that we see Marion Hampton go 10 to the Bears. So I think this thought that he falls really late in the first round is not realistic. So that's been my landing spot for him. There's a lot of smoke between those two parties. And again, I would not be surprised to see Breece Hall get moved during the draft at all. I think that's a very, very realistic possibility. I think
what are we getting?
I think you can move him for like probably a late day 2 pick, maybe like an early day 3 and some future capital as well. But again, like if you move him during the draft, I'm not saying it will happen, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be shocked if it does. But there's running backs who could come in and replace him day one in this class. This running back class is outstanding. Like a Bashal Tutin out of Virginia Tech that we mentioned before.
Yeah,
he's very, very similar stylistically to Breece Hall, in my opinion. I think that they play very similar roles and a very similar skill set. There's guys that fit every single mold you could possibly want. So if you do want to move on from Breece, this is the draft class to do it because you have so many options to replace him.
Fair enough. All right, rapid fire here. EZ joins us here on the program. What's up, EZ?
I agree with the last caller. Right now is time to strike and trade Breece. I love Breece. This is not a personal thing. I think as a business decision purely, he's probably at his healthiest, and it'd just be a good time. You can always replace running backs in this league, and that's the one good thing about running backs, and that's why his position has been devalued over the years. Let me stop that shaking. Okay.
You're entering the atmosphere. Yep, go ahead.
The position has definitely been devalued over the years. As a matter of fact, I was listening to something really, really interesting this morning on YouTube, and they were talking about the rise and fall of the wishbone offense. Have you ever seen that? It's very interesting. They were talking about how when it first came out, it was undefendable because nobody knew it was basically a triple option, a triple quarterback option package at the time. And Oklahoma made a staple out of it, and they were talking about it took like almost 10 years for defenses in college to figure out how to stop it. But once they figured out how to stop it by changing to 3-4 defenses and all this other thing, and having designated spies, he says it took that long to stop it. But basically, the point I'm making is that running backs are the quickest to come up to speed from a youthful position, and also the quickest to diminish your talents. So if someone really wants him and they think that we can get some good value for him, I mean, he's gone anyway. We already know this. He's gone. We know he's gone. So don't just give him away. Just even if you get like a third-round pick next year or a fourth or a second-rounder next year, it's still value over a guy that's going anyway.
Whoa. You see, safe travels, my friend. Good Lord have mercy. What was going on? Oh, God. Okay. Tearing up a little. Okay. You see, you always make it enjoyable. We have 900 people in the room. I see we have 5 more callers left. I have to get to the radio station, so unfortunately, I'm sorry to the 5 callers that are waiting. What a show. Drew, again, I can't thank you enough for joining us over these last however long it's been. It feels like
crazy. It's flown by.
It's like exactly. That's what I was going to say. It just feels like you just started these yesterday. I've really enjoyed them. I can't wait. We will obviously do another one to recap the draft next week, and we'll of course have you on the live show that's coming up on Thursday, which is going to be awesome. But just want to thank you again for
thank you, Paul. It's been so awesome to be on here the past few weeks. It's been
a little bit of everything on this show. Thank you, everybody, for calling in and joining the show. God bless. We'll be back on the show tomorrow. God bless. It's draft week.